Hello, and thank you for joining us for this part of E3's Online Learning Educator series. This series was created to assist schools by providing different tools and strategies to make online learning successful for teachers and students. I'm Lawrence Xu, Dean of Instruction, Assessment, and Innovation. I'm here with two of my colleagues, Mr. Zhang and Mr. Sharudi. Mr. Zhang is a math learning facilitator, and Mr. Sharudi is a computer science learning facilitator. Today, we will cover the topics of how to introduce Zoom to students, how to engage students when using Zoom, how to manage the class in Zoom, how to structure instructions in Zoom, how to check for understanding, and how to use breakout room efficiently in Zoom. We're from E3 Civic High, a public charter school located in the downtown Central Library. Our school received the school closure notification on March 15th, along with the rest of schools in the county. On the same day, we quickly developed a distance learning plan and shared with our scholars and parents. On the following Monday, March 16th, we started distance learning model by using Google Meet as the platform. The next day, we transitioned from Google Meet to Zoom and have used Zoom. How did we introduce our scholars? Mr. Zhang will lead us through.
So one of the first things we did was post the links of the Zoom meetings in Google Classroom as well as Google Calendar so that students would have two places they can go to access our Zoom meetings. And then we also rolled out some netiquette education through our advisory period, which is very similar to homeroom for many other schools and districts. And essentially, we emphasized that all scholars needed to have their video cameras on, one for the socio-emotional aspect, where scholars can be social, see each other on camera, and interact with each other. And another was ensuring the safety of all scholars while they are in our classrooms. And then we also wanted them to, prepare like it was a regular school day. So get out of bed, get dressed, eat breakfast. And so they would come into the virtual classroom with the mindset that they were ready to learn. And then we are also continuously exploring and learning about Zoom, as well as the virtual learning environment together. So how we engage students with Zoom, first, one of the biggest things that we use is screen sharing on Zoom so that all students can see what we see, whether that be slides or discussion boards or whatever. And then we also use Pear Deck, and then Nearpod is another substitute for Pear Deck where students can individually see the slides that you have shared with them. And then we also build in discussion boards through Google Classroom as well as Padlet so that students are able to have those discussions like they would in the classroom, but in an online format. Emotional support is really important while we are in this learning space. So we have mindfulness checks throughout the day. We try to do fun things like virtual backgrounds with Zoom so that students get some, creative and fun ways to engage in the classroom. And then we also hold office hours either during lunch or after school so that students who need additional support can still come see us in the virtual learning environment. So here are just some examples of like mindfulness checks. So for warm-ups, students could write things like Rosebud Thorn, just to kind of reflect on how things have been going, talking about the good things as well as challenging things. We might also do like 3-minute or 5-minute meditation exercises just to calm students down and prepare them for the school day. And then we also really make sure to build student buy-in because that has been really important, especially in an online environment. So first establishing a clear structure with a daily agenda, and then presenting interesting problems that students really want to think about and solve. And then through all of that, building in collaborative activities so that students can still work together in this time. And some of the keys there are assigning roles so that all students have ownership going into those collaborative activities, and then providing, word problems, multi-step challenges where they really have to think things through. So here is an example of one of my slides in math that I've used. This graphic organizer makes it much easier for students to follow along. And then with Zoom, you can also write on your slide so that students can know what to fill in the blanks. And it really breaks things down and scaffolds for students appropriately. So all of that can still be done on Zoom. And then this is an example of a word problem that I've given my students where they've had to work in groups to write an inequality about the weight that the elevator at our school, E3 Civic High, can hold. And then they are, on the next slide, then asked to solve the problem that the group wrote. There might be some group share-outs. And so every student has a role when in these collaborative activities. And then lastly, engaging students through physical movement while in this learning environment. And I have an example of that on the next slide as well. So this is something that I've done recently where I ask students to take a picture or a video of something at home that can represent a polynomial expression. I uploaded a couple examples here so that they could see what I have done or what I have found. And then I asked them to go to Padlet to upload those so that they can view each other's pictures or videos and start kind of a discussion board there. That required them to move around in their home, find things. Some of my students went outside to shoot a basketball. So those are just more engaging things that we have done through Zoom. And then the classroom management aspect, making sure that all video cameras are on. We're able to monitor all of our students' activities on their laptop through Dino. We're able to have one-on-one conversations through Zoom in breakout rooms. And then there is the community building piece so that all students can feel included and safe in this virtual environment. And with that, with community building, I just do a lot of check-ins where students can talk to each other and share their thoughts about how all of this is affecting them and their family. Now, Mr. Sharuti will talk about structuring instruction in Zoom.
Teaching with Zoom is not simply teaching your regular classroom lesson, but online. You need to change your instruction slightly to handle Zoom, both to take advantage of its advantages and to diminish the disadvantages that you're going to experience. There's 3 different modes of instruction that we'll talk about here that may be familiar to other types of instructions you've seen before, like flipped classroom. The synchronous learning that goes on when everybody's connected together in Zoom. The asynchronous learning that you push off to offline, and then the small group learning that goes on. We need to remember that online, our students aren't going to learn as much as they would if you were directly in front of them in the classroom. So we need to keep our instruction simple. We need to break it down even smaller than we would in the classroom into individual parts. And we need to include student presentations and class discussions to keep it engaging and to provide that socialization. Our asynchronous work should provide formative checks built in, and we can do this with a bunch of different tools that we have available to us. Some of the examples are IXL, Edpuzzle, Khan Academy, and through Google Forms. Checking for understanding in Zoom can be done with built-in Zoom tools as well. So we can just use the Zoom built-in emotions to have applause or thumbs up in the reactions. And this gives us ability to instantly check, are you following? We can also use the Zoom polling to ask a question and get back a response, and those can be set up on the fly or in advance. Zoom also gives us ability to have votes in the participants tab. So we can ask a yes or no question, or even phrase a question such that a yes or no answer can handle it and answer that directly through Zoom. And in that way, we can check all the students, whether they're following us at the time. This is important because in Zoom, you're not going to see all your students at the same time, and you're not going to have a lot of the body language clues that you're used to seeing, so you need to replace them with specific checks for understanding. We can also use pair decks, which we've talked about before, to get accountability as we're going through our direct instruction and have them fill in answers as we go through and see that everybody's keeping up with the class and mastering the material. It's important, again, in Zoom to make sure you have a random call. So you may want to use a separate tool that picks who to call on. One of the problems is, again, is typically you only see a portion of your class in Zoom. The rest of the class is hidden from you. So you may forget about a student. A student may drift to the back of the room, for example. So randomly calling on your students, make sure that everyone's getting checked. Finally, don't forget about games that we can use to check for instruction. Things like Kahoot and Quizlet and Jeopardy are great ways to build engagement and simultaneously get a feeling for, is your class keeping up with the material? Breakout rooms are an amazing tool in Zoom if you learn how to use them right. One of the most important things is when you break your students out into breakout rooms, you are putting them out on an island by themselves. Now you can drop in and check on them, but they're not going to have somebody to immediately turn to and ask a question. So they need to know before they go to the breakout room what the task is, what's expected of them, how to get help, and what they're responsible for bringing back to the session to share. You need to make sure you're consciously grouping students. While for a small task, you might say it's okay to randomly group the students, which Zoom can do for you, be aware that if you have a student who needs extra language support, that you're putting somebody with them that can help translate those instructions. As a teacher, you need to move between those groups frequently to make sure the groups are on task. Students can use the Ask for Help button to page you to a room, but you need to be more proactive and drop into each group and make sure that they know what their instructions are and that they're getting called out. Make sure the students are accountable for accomplishing something in their breakout room by building in a part of your activity where they bring back to share. I also use one-on-one discussions in breakout rooms. So if I need to discuss a scholar's grades, I can pull them into their own separate breakout room for that discussion. So when I create breakout rooms, I always add a few extra breakout rooms, a few carols for students who may want to work on their own that day, and also one for my office.